So, any advice for me? Any embarrassing questions planted?
Are you fighting an uphill battle in Washington, D.C. about all this issue?
You know, the tide, I think, is changing. We got our head handed to us the last two farm bills. It's not been pleasant. But it's starting to switch. The last farm bill, we got a little support for what they call specialty crops, which we would call food. Fruits, vegetables, you know, the nuts and berries, you know, excuse me, specialty crops. But it started. We got a little help for that. We got a little plus up on some of the environmental things, although they're coming back to try and balance the budget on it. A little more attention to the nutrition part. You know, they're very savvy. They tie together the nutrition, the food stamps, SNAP program, and WIC, you know, as part of the farm bill. And they kind of make some of the people from urban America think, well, you know, we're allowing you to draft along with us, and don't rock the boat, or we'll just have to cut you. You know, it's really hard to give you as much money as we give. Well, the American public actually is more supportive of the nutrition part of it than they are the agribusiness part. This is starting to become apparent. And I've had a lot of collaboration with some very conservative people that I don't necessarily agree with on your future health care, for instance. So it's building. There's an institute back there. One of the hedge fund billionaires, maybe he was feeling guilty about it, has endowed a $1 billion foundation to deal with long-term financing. And this institute came up with a program where they invited think tanks all across the spectrum, right, left, and sideways, to come up with their vision for how we had a stable financial future, and gave them like $200,000 to develop their models. 6 people took the money and developed the models, and they were pretty wide variation about what actually happened with taxes and defense and healthcare. All 6 agreed that we needed to reform agricultural spending. So it's happening, and you're hitting the street at exactly the right time, because the Farm Bill is coming up, and we've got these Tea Party Republicans, who a number of whom kind of agree that something needs to happen.
So imagine if you're standing with me at the door, and I'm just give the rap about this campaign to somebody, and the person that I'm talking to is fairly supportive and really feels that this is an important thing, but just doesn't feel hopeful about how getting involved is going to help. And if you were standing next to me as a congressman, how would you respond to that person and say, you getting involved is going to make a difference? What could you say to that person?
Well, for me, particularly if we're talking to people in the Portland metropolitan area, I mean, they can see, I think, what's going on around them. You know, what's happening with restaurants that are going into neighborhoods that were, shall we say, a little dicey a few years ago, that are changing the mindset in terms of how people are involved. What we are doing with these farmers markets that are exploding, not just down at Portland State, but in farmers markets in Lents and in Hollywood, Milwaukee, Gresham. There's this movement that's coming forward, and that there is this time where we can save billions of dollars and help the type of agriculture they want, and there is some connection. There's something that everybody can do. They can be part of, harassing members of Congress, although you don't need to give them my phone number. I'd rather have my staff working on the bills than saying, yes, we agree. Yes, we agree. But part of it is helping direct them into the network that is here. And I haven't reviewed the materials, but it is so exciting to me. We had this, we've got the Multnomah County, I can't keep track of all the groups that are involved in terms of dealing with food deserts, in terms of what's happening with the food bank, in terms of people that are looking at the James Beard permanent home for the farmers markets, people who want to be involved with CSAs. There is a list of contact points for them, people that they can be engaged in, and see that it is making a difference. And it's something I think each of us needs to be aware in our own environment of what the restaurants are where people are really fighting to have fresh local produce. In an era of $100 a barrel oil is going to be the norm, and it's probably going to be going up. How confident are we that we can have our food shipped 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles, 3,000 miles? And what was going on in Europe? E. coli. The comfort of being able to have a diverse food supply and look the farmer or rancher in the eye, as opposed to being thrown into this big, amorphous, industrial, where the ground beef could have come from 800 places and commercial feedlots, where you don't know exactly the trail of the fruits and vegetables. I mean, this is a revolution that you are a part of, and I think there is something that we can find that will trigger in almost anybody. What they can see here on the ground, what kind of food they like. Maybe it's wine. Thank you very much. We have 31 Oregon vineyards that are carbon neutral. And it's just, the list goes on. So having a chance to familiarize yourself with the neat stuff, and I think the most important single thing is what matters to you. What is it that pushes your button about food and nutrition, about not having morbidly obese 800-pound fourth graders? And having diabetes, all of a sudden this is a junior high disease. Or it's just having food that has flavor. That's okay to be passionate about. It tastes good. So having your story, what matters to you, will make, I think, all the difference in the world. Because your enthusiasm, your connection, your passion, your commitment radiates. And I think at the end of the day, people here want connection. They want hope. They want something that can relate to them. And I can't think of a subject that has broader application than rediscovering food, how to grow it, how to prepare it, how to share it in a way that strengthens the environment rather than weakens it. Much too long an answer, I'm sorry.
That's great. Thank you very much.
What we should do in the tech age is when that question comes up, we can record it, put it on our phones.
Right.
I'm glad you asked that.
I will tell you, your story, your reason is much more compelling than mine. You're there looking them in the eye. You're the one who's out there in the rain, or God forbid, a nice day. You're connecting, and that's what really matters.
Say one more question.
So in the debating of the Farm Bill next year, if you caught wind that all of the subsidies for agribusiness were going to be eliminated for corn and soy, would you leave it at that and save the money for the government, or are there certain subsidies that you think are essential that we should replace those with?
That's a great question. It's a great question on two levels. And I do believe we need to redirect our spending, because over time we do need to get the deficit under control. Over time, we've got other priorities like education and the environment. But in this budget for agriculture, I think it is important to help farmers and ranchers change, because it's a tough business. Those of you who know, have friends who are in agriculture or trying to stay in agriculture, it's a tough business. We don't make it easy for young people to get into agriculture, and we need to change that in terms of agricultural internships and being able for land purchases. And part of why it's so important to break the back of this huge machine that is subsidizing gargantuan operations is because it's squeezing out the small and medium-sized operators. And the large ones are buying more and more land, and they have a competitive position that is very hard for when some people are just shopping on price. So I think it's important to redirect some of this. I'm deadly serious about the environmental investments. I want to pay farmers and ranchers to be able to grow food in a more environmentally sustainable way. That's in the long run it will be cheaper, but making the transitions is tough. Some of the things that needs to be done with changing, like the drip irrigation, changing patterns of cultivation, maybe taking some land out of production, having more buffers around streams and rivers. This doesn't happen overnight. It is a change. In some cases, it costs more to get there. So I would provide subsidies for farmers to do that. I would subsidizing putting healthy food in schools. That's worth it. Make sure that low-income people, the children, I do it for prisons, I do it for hospitals, being able to provide a predictable supply of local food. That's worthy of subsidization. I'm also serious about a farmer's market. I think that's basic infrastructure, just like bike paths and intersections and street lights. Having communities of any size have a permanent home for direct marketing for agriculture is good for economic development. You know, look what happens in downtown Madison around the State House on that huge farmer's market. I mean, it just is a magnet that brings people. People feel good about spending more. So I think we reduce overall spending. I would put absolute limits that nobody who makes over $250,000, I would put limits on the total amount. Thank you very much. But I would be investing in infrastructure, I would be investing in environment, I would be investing in land conservation, so that the dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi River, gets a little smaller, maybe just the size of Delaware. We can hope. But I mean, it's a great question. It's worthy of debate, but I think we can have a little bit of support for the taxpayer with reduced deficit, and a lot of support for the taxpayer with better food, healthier kids, stronger communities. Thanks. Thank you very much.